Welcome beyond the Reiki Gateway. I'm your host, Andrea Kennedy. Like countless others, Reiki found me when I wasn't even looking, and then it ignited a whole new world of questions. This podcast explores topics of interest for the spiritually curious. Join me for discussions and special guests on subjects such as past lives, crystal healing, spiritual awakening, ascension, energy healing, and more, all to assist and inspire you along your unique soul's journey. This episode is sponsored by Mainstream Reiki, offering live and online Reiki classes and a membership community to help Reiki practitioners succeed and grow in their practice. Find out more at mainstreamreiki.com. Welcome back to Beyond the Reiki Gateway. I'm your host, Andrea Kennedy, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Mark Mezadourian, whose life took an unexpected turn in 1998 when a series of personal challenges opened the door to a profound spiritual awakening. Today, he's a respected intuitive guide for individuals wishing to spiritually evolve and receive personal and unique assistance directly from the angels. Mark will share how we can help ourselves open up and receive daily transformative love and guidance starting now. This episode really does prove to be, I think, a moment in time for people, Mark. And my hope is that we can choose to start with a practice today, perhaps, or new things to bring into our lives to set a new course toward more guidance, more love, more connection. And so, with that in mind, I'm really excited to have you here. And I just want to first say thank you for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here and to connect with you and everyone listening.
Phenomenal. So, angels, it's a pretty popular topic these days. We didn't hear a lot about angels, at least, I don't know, when I was younger. It just seems like more and more people have an interest in angels, angel numbers, and things like that. In the spiritual community, we hear a lot about that. The angel numbers, and I'm curious how you became connected with the angels. Is there a moment in time? Is there an event where this relationship really took off for you?
Yes. In 1998, I had an anxiety attack, which was incredibly informative. And it's recognizing that most of us get into spirituality based on suffering of some kind. And our evolution, we want to focus on learning through insight, but usually the spark is something going wrong. So things go wrong kind of dramatically, and I started to engage with angels. I was encouraged to talk to angels and to call in angels, and that immediately was relaxing and expansive. And I'll tell just the very quick story, which is in 1997, my grandmother had died, and I was working full-time at a theater and did not process her death. I took a trip and processed her death a bit more, and I came back to the person who I left in charge of my apartment, and they had gone on a heroin binge and essentially destroyed my apartment.
Oh, my.
And so I kicked them out, but there was this negative energy in the apartment, and I did not want to be there. And so a couple of days later, I had an anxiety attack, and I was staying at my girlfriend's house, and I had no idea how to get rid of this thing. And so I asked for advice, none of which I would do now, but it was helpful at the time. And part of it was call in Archangel Michael. And so the dramatic part, which got my attention, was I chose this day to reclaim my apartment. I had a bowl of citrus and sea salt in the corners, and I was playing Gregorian chant music. But I ended up, shouting, like, get the bleep out of my apartment. And the apartment had a long hallway. I was in the bedroom. At the corner of my eye, I saw in the living room this kind of black bear figure. And I instinctively threw this glass bowl of citrus down the hallway. It landed perfectly in the center of the room, did not break. The toilet flushed, and this thing was gone. So I was like, well, what happened? What happened? What actually worked there? So I went to work, came back. The electricity, which had been off, was on again. And so this got my attention of like, you know, maybe, maybe there's something here with calling out what you want. Maybe there's something here with talking to angels. So I started to just do that, just to thank you, angels, for helping me during this day. Anything you want me to know? Just started that conversation very lightly. And this was at a time I was very skeptical about things. So I wasn't so invested in like, what do other people say about angels, but what was my experience with them? What do they say? What do they do? How do they act? And what came was just grace and peace and kind of this, hi, we're right here. And with the angel numbers you mentioned, I started to wake up every single morning at 444, 444, an angel hello, and seeing that on license plates all the time. And just this sense of the universe is trying to communicate with me, which then interrupted a sense of being isolated or alone or misunderstood. And then the depth of conversation from people who were wise came forward, especially older people, you know. And so this started a progression of developing a relationship with the angels, which I think is something we don't really think about, is what is our relationship with them? And it comes to understanding more and more unconditional love. That the angels see us with unconditional love, they experience us with unconditional love. They are not human, they don't have human values. They're never mad at us or disappointed in us. They love us. And it's a matter of extracting ourselves from the projections that we're used to holding on to. That we are deficient, that everyone else knows what's happening except for us. All these different things that diminish us, and getting into a space of being receptive to that love and care and aligning ourselves with that love and care, but also to ask for it. Thank you, angels, for this wonderful day. Think of this wonderful conversation right now.
Yeah, you know, what really stood out to me though, Mark, was that
Mm-hmm.
you shared something that I think people get to later.
Mm-hmm.
And that is you weren't taking input from everything external about the
Mm-hmm.
angels. You know, what you said was, you were like, yeah, but what did they say? And
Yeah.
you were more interested in your own experience, your own interaction, exchange, whatever came through that experience for you. I think so many people, that's what trips them up, you know, especially
Yeah.
early, is they're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I have an interest in fill in the blank. And then the first thing they do is they Google it, you know, and they ask
Yeah.
people and they get the books and, you know, all of that kind of thing to research it all. And then they load up on all that information. And then they might say, okay, well, I'll try it now. But they've,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, kind of, you know, tainted the I don't know, input in a way with all these other ideas and other people's
Mm-hmm.
experiences. But I think that's also human nature too.
Sure.
But I just really find that fascinating. How could you trust that? I mean, I think that's a key for people too. I think it goes
Mm-hmm.
hand in hand with this because they're like, well, I don't trust myself to know what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. So I'm going to go look out there at other
Mm-hmm.
people's experiences first. So
Mm-hmm.
trust. How did you trust what you were experiencing or what you were receiving? And I'd love to get your take on that for the audience.
Sure.
Maybe it could help them trust more.
100%. So what we're talking about here is the rules, ultimately.
Oh, okay.
And there's like probably 5 thoughts here, and I appreciate you posing the question. How I knew it was working was I felt peace and I was
Mm,
able to be present. And that was not my normal state of being. So I was saying, like, oh, this actually works. And so the question coming to, well, who am I when I'm doing that, as opposed to who am I when I'm stressed out? And so it was like a feedback loop in that. And I think for our current moment right now, you know, coming out of the pandemic, and what the pandemic created was everything now is unfamiliar.
Mhm.
That the old ways that we're used to things being, the old rules are out the window, which could be very disconcerting. In that we're interrupting our quest for finding someone else who knows.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's understanding that the parent, I know there's lots of different thoughts here, but we never talk about the evolution of spirituality, but we're evolving now. So like the guru, like someone else knows more than you, that's just completely out the window. And the energy now is, and here's your podcast of let's do it together.
Mhm.
Let's learn together.
Yeah.
And there's no one way this works. This is different for everyone, but there are techniques and there are consistencies, which involves, in essence, our affinities, like what angel, what goddess, what guide, what musician, what ancestor do we resonate most with? What tree, whatever it is that we connect, that the world gets bigger than just ourselves. And we consciously interrupt that sense of isolation and trusting that spirituality makes everything bigger. It adds options.
There are a lot of thoughts about this, Mark. And
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you mentioned the guru, wow, isn't that so true, right? The age of the guru, I've been saying that to people. That's over with,
It's
and I
over with.
yeah, and I think so many of our listeners and our viewers on YouTube totally get that too. And the
Yeah.
times have changed through the pandemic.
Mhm.
It's been wonderful. Well, of course, it wasn't all wonderful. Let's be real.
Well, trauma,
Um,
trauma, 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 trauma. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
there, as with everything, there were positives and negatives there, but huge growth potential, huge
Yes.
awareness um, potential for people if they're ready for that. But your awakening was well before the pandemic, right? But I love what you said. You said you noticed how you felt different. And that is underlining for me, I think, a great message, if you could speak to this. And that's uh, and we're really already talking about it, but the trusting of yourself. So if we say the guru and all of that stuff, that's all over, okay, then what is the new way of being then? What are we moving toward? And so if you could speak a little bit about that, because you were really ahead of the curve on that, from my perspective.
That we are included, all of us are included in all the good in the universe. And what is collapsing now is the old models of power, where it's just for a few people. Only a few people can tune in.
Mm,
And that we're looking for someone else who knows. And so this gets into a space of immediacy of what is it like for each of us to connect in some way. Thank you, angels, for this wonderful day. Thank you for all my encounters and environments being filled with love. To have an intention and to trust that it's okay to have an intention. It's okay for the world to get bigger. And that it's okay to have a say in our own lives. And to trust that we are included. That when we ask for help, the help will come. And perhaps it's best not to prescribe what the help should look like, but to put forward that intention and to make the world bigger. But to trust that we're changing the conversation about spirituality. So it's more updated and immediate. That we're basically releasing the middleman or the middlewoman. That there is a
yeah.
direct connection between ourselves and Source and the angels, the universe, Mother, Father, God, nature, that we are included, which is addressing core wounds of being isolated or excluded, or the idea that I think many of us have that other people know more than we do.
Yeah, that's a big
And
one, isn't it?
it's a big one. And so it's seeing one of, and you spoke of the benefits of the pandemic. So if what happened was that things were decided for us, whether we agree with that or not, and that our priorities shifted, our sense of time shifted, and all relationships changed, which is a lot. But coming out of that, it's a sense of what actually works, what do we value, and what could we rely upon. And it's trusting that our spiritual instincts have a purity to them, and
Mm.
that the universe is not offended by our being happy. The universe wants us to be happy. And we have help in this. I think that's one of the key thoughts, that we are not on our own, and that we are seen and heard and supported. And so if we think of coming back to our relationship with spirituality, our relationship, let's say, with angels or goddesses or guides, or Maya Angelou or David Bowie or Mary Oliver, guides that are around and available, the Reiki masters and such, and just opening up to that relationship and seeing what happens and letting that be very personal and coming back to immediate. And when we put forward any kind of prayer or intention, to trust that something will happen. And it may not be in that second, but let's just trust that we are being supported and asking for support, which makes our worlds bigger. And we add more options. We're putting more options on the table. It's okay to have a preference. It's okay to change. We're very good at change. And it's okay for things to get better.
Yeah, I'm wondering how people hold themselves back, though, about,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of fears about
Mm-hmm.
uh, that we're not worthy,
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
we don't deserve uh, blessings for nothing, you know,
Yeah,
um, maybe fear of abandonment,
for
that
sure.
kind of thing. And so, as you're talking about engaging with the angels and receiving help, or the other guides in that, that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
but receiving the help, I have to imagine, don't you run into people who resist? I mean, not just receiving the help, but asking for the help.
Yeah. And that would range from resistance to terror.
Oh, terror.
So we're taught that we suck and we don't suck. We're taught that we're less than,
Hmm. Yeah.
and we're taught that other people are in charge. And so to have a preference, to want something different, might feel like it's defiance or breaking the rules. And if we think of what is the biggest resistance to intuition, which is the question, how do you know the difference between your ego and spirit? And if we could trust that the ego's job is to keep you alive, and we're alive. So good job, ego. But the ego is going to want to prevent or limit change. So even if your life is hard, that you're alive, and so the ego is going to want to maintain the status quo. And so the wording of the ego might be a bunch of coulds, would, shoulds, need to, have to, limiting verbiage. And guidance is going to add options and make the world bigger. It's
Mm.
also going to bring relief. So we're all used to the voice of the ego. You better not do that. You better not ask for help. Who are you to ask for help? And so if we think of engaging with our spirituality, engaging, let's say, with angels, who once again work with unconditional love, and perhaps we could recognize that our sense of deserving and worth ultimately can heal, and that they don't matter so much in our relationship with the angels, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That it usually is front and center for us, like our sense of unworthiness. But what if that moved aside into a space of, thank you, Archangel Michael, for helping me today. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for helping me with this conversation. Thank you, angels, for helping the United States to thrive. Thank you, angels, for this peaceful planet. And the,
Mm.
the simple thing we could do is advocate for being happy. And what's wrong with being happy? And most of us are unhappy, and most of us are not having any fun. And so it's just seeing in that it's okay to be happy. And so the larger conversation perhaps right now is, well, there's all these things that seem like they're wrong in the world right now, all these very stressful and unfair dynamics. How do we address that? We address that, and this sounds slight, but it's not, by dropping out of it and being peaceful right here.
Mm. Yeah.
And
I could,
so, yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
I, I just really can't agree with that more, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
some of what you're saying is so familiar to me, which
Mm-hmm.
is wonderful. And um, which I feel is interesting because a moment ago, when you were talking about the ego and guidance and the
Mm-hmm.
difference between those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and you said guidance feels
Mm-hmm.
peaceful, you know, and you
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
included some other wonderful adjectives there. But isn't that interesting that the vibration of guidance is peaceful and we want to create more peace on the planet? So it would really make sense then tune in and receive guidance, right? To
Mm-hmm.
have more
Yeah.
peace in your life. And you know, if if we do want more peace in our lives, it all starts with the individual because
Yeah.
individuals at peace create from that vibration. So that's how I think we change the world. And we've really talked a lot about in sort of a tangential way after the pandemic, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a huge global thing happening, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
right now on the planet. And um, so if we could maybe shift a little bit and talk about that this time, and you've already really covered some things there about, coming home, trusting the self, you know, we have power ourselves and things like that, not
Mm-hmm.
looking for the external. But in a global sense, and you mentioned all of the stuff out there happening that is not peaceful. Do the angels tell you about these times? Are there messages that you could share with us
Mm-hmm.
that are timely?
Mm-hmm. There are, which is they're not worried.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear.
Yeah, they're not going
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, what are you guys doing?" We may be saying that, but their message is it's interesting, and all the record. We'll get to this later, I'm sure, but on YouTube, I have a bunch of free recordings, hundreds of them, which is like, what are the angels saying? And it's in a group setting, which is a held space with the angels, and just those happen multiple times a week, and these are free. But it's just seeing like, what are they talking about? And they're talking about let's relax and let's heal. Let's come to a space of self leadership. Let's drop
Mm,
out of the collective angst. We could be aware of the collective angst. We could have knowledge of that, but it's also seeing a space to drop out of some things and come back to the core question, which is what do we want to have happen? We all want peace and love, and our methods are different. For some, killing everyone, then you have peace. That might be short sighted. I think also with what you were mentioning about the message for everyone who will be listening here, we have to come to like a really strong core understanding. This is everyone who's going to watch us is sensitive.
mhm.
Everyone. And it's understanding that you are not alone, that we're all sensitive who are engaging with this. And to witness the world right now is hard. And then, so what could we do to make things easier and find some relief? And that is using our spiritual toolbox. That is using our spiritual skills, whatever they are, be that to have a prayer, to have intention, to have affirmations said, to listen to music, to use crystals, whatever it is, to do Reiki. have Reiki performed on you, whatever it is that works, or music, but to trust that there's something for us to drop out of, which is, and some of this could be hard, but maybe it's easy, to release the idea that everyone's going to change at once.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what?
And,
I just want to
yeah.
say, though, it
Hmm.
wouldn't be good if everybody changed at once,
No,
you
it's
know?
not happening to me.
Yeah,
So,
it's not happening, but yeah, I mean,
yeah.
but yeah, yeah, that's impossible, but yeah, I
Hmm.
don't think we would want that anyway,
Hmm.
because I I think the most peaceful thing is gradual, natural resonance, and,
Hmm.
that's a process, I think,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I'm all there, I embrace that,
Hmm.
um because you said it too, everybody's so different. What means one thing to one person, there and I think that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, we're
Yes.
all like facets of the same jewel, and the light reflects differently for each and every one of us. But wow, this is really interesting, and you get together regularly, and I think there's magic in this when people gather. Um, So what is your take on this? Because I know mental health really suffered, or I don't. Yes, it did, but I think it's more out in the open since the pandemic,
For sure.
and yeah, and I think that's been a positive thing. But the highlight or the message that I've heard a lot is that loneliness is so terrible. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
for not just mental health, but physical health, spiritual health, all of that. And that
Mm-hmm.
there's an epidemic of feeling alone out there. But
Yeah.
when you mentioned about gathering, something kind of, I don't know, lit up for me. And so I'd love for you to talk about that, and what your experience is about that.
That gathering is essential. And the ones I'm talking about are on Zoom. And before the pandemic, I got two pieces of guidance, which was Zoom, which I had used in the past and didn't like. It was before it got really good. And I was using a phone system. And my phone system stopped working, and I re engaged with Zoom. And the other piece of guidance before the pandemic was held spaces,
Mm.
just to have
Mhm.
held spaces. So the pandemic started. It's like, boom, I hit the ground running with having free 4 held spaces a week. So people had somewhere to go and something to do. And in speaking to loneliness and isolation, which is, it's now a choice to engage with people or not. And it
Mm.
seems like a lot of folks have a lot of hesitation around that. And if we could also just briefly touch upon anxiety
Mhm.
and trauma, which perhaps are coupled, and just understanding that the anxiety, it's multifaceted, but being spending a year plus inside with our only outlet being technology, it's a lot of stress on our nervous system, the absence of sun and movement and touch and all these different things. And it seems to be getting into the conscious choice to re-engage, and the conscious choice to let the world be big again, and the um, contrast between having a whole universe of devices where all this information is available and the absence of actual connection. Michael Beckwith calls it a high-tech, low-touch world, you know, and seeing where the point of the held spaces is to stretch our spiritual muscles and to be in community and to practice, to have a space where you can actually come and um, it's multifaceted, which is everyone comes, it's on Zoom, they're free, they still happen. Um, and you're asked to state an intention, and that could be peace, that could be like to work on releasing insecurity, or like to focus on world peace, whatever it is. But to state an intention, I guide people through an experience with the angels, and we just see what they say. And then we get to share at the end. So people get to practice articulating their spiritual experience. And that to me is meeting an unmet need, which is, where do we get good at this? Where do we get to practice articulating our spiritual experience, or being aware of our spiritual experiences, or being aware of what's actually changing right now? You know, where are we having experience of not taking something personally where we might have in the past? Where can we, as sensitive people or empaths, have the shift? We should talk about this, which is into, thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 feet of unconditional love, which is, and as empaths, we're used to everything coming this way and everything being small. And it's recognizing our superpower as empaths is, if we're sensitive to energy, it means we could influence energy. No one ever
Yes.
teaches us about how to influence energy, which is, thank you, Archangel Michael, for infusing my immediate space with love. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for all of my encounters and environments being filled with love. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for individualizing my energy. The shortcut to that being, I am Mark, I'm not anybody else. So we're doing all these different steps of individualization, but the main one being, thank you, Archangel Michael, for surrounding me with 1,000 feet of unconditional love, which is, it's a huge distance, but we're putting forward a preference there, which is, what is it like to have the entire structure that you're in being filled with unconditional love, and to notice the space between you and the device, the space between you and the wall and the window and the ceiling, all that.
Yeah. You use the word intention.
Yeah.
And, this is, really vital to what I do in my own
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear intention, this topic. How would you explain that to people and the power of that? And, I believe you also use the word claim or claiming. And so to
Yeah.
me, all of these things are related. But I wonder if you could, kind of do a little intention 101 for us.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hello, it's Andrea, and in addition to being your host here at the podcast, I'm the founder of Mainstream Reiki, where bringing Reiki further into the mainstream is my mission. I offer quality Reiki classes of all levels to students attending live from around the world. And I've built a membership community as well to help Reiki people connect with each other through discussions, events, and Reiki practice. So if you're considering learning Reiki, or you already have, I invite you to visit mainstreamreiki.com to discover your next step in your Reiki journey. Thank you. And now, back to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for asking. The intention 101 would be, it's okay for us to have a say in our own lives. And as sensitive people, the commonality of sensitive people is that we're used to making sure that everyone else is okay, and we don't consider ourselves. Is everyone else all right? Everyone else all right? And that is likely out of trauma, like a trauma response. And it's inverting that equation into, what would I like to have happen? What would you like to have happen? Which sounds like a simple question. I find in doing, lots of groups and also one-on-one, readings and counseling and such, which is, people answer honestly if you ask them, what would you like to have happen? And it's advocating for ourselves, but also for the highest good. And so this gets into having perhaps some healthy defiance, and also trusting free will, and experimenting with hope. And that might look like, thank you, angels, for this peaceful planet. Thank you for us having generation after generation of children who are not raised with trauma. So those are intentions. So the intention 101 would be to state, perhaps out loud, perhaps telepathically, whatever's comfortable for you, and just to talk about what you would like to have happen. Thank you, angels, for my being happy during this day. Thank you for all my loved ones being happy during this day. So that's not prescribing what should happen or that so and so should do this or this government should do this. It's just putting forward what you would like to have happen. So we're focusing on the what, not the how. What would we like to have happen, not how it's going to happen? Go ahead. Yeah.
And then how then would you describe what's happening then energetically with relation to the person saying that,
Yes.
the angels,
Yeah.
and the outcome? Can you break that down so I
Yes.
understand?
Yeah.
And I love that question. What would you like to have happen? I mean,
What would, yeah.
yeah, I mean, we never ask ourselves that.
No.
We,
We're very aware of what we don't want to have happen.
yeah,
We're aware of what's not working. Yeah.
yeah. So just that one shift about asking ourselves that question, that one change could just be huge in and of itself to get our minds focusing on the hope, the possibilities instead of the limitations. So, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so where was I? Yeah, I was curious as to if you could explain. So we state that intention, or what we would like to have happen or see out there, and then what happens behind the scenes?
These are great questions. So we put forward an intention. So, like right now, where I am in Washington, D.C., my Aunt Sonia is recovering from open heart surgery. So the intention was thank you, angels, for Sonia having the perfect surgery and her having an effortless recovery. And so that's not saying that's not prescribing what should happen. It's an intention. What we're doing with the intention is letting more help happen. So we are used to having everything land on us as sensitive people, and we're excellent problem solvers. And so what we're doing in that is adding more help, which would be the angels, the universe, perhaps other people. But by stating that, thank you, angels, for Sonia recovering well. Thank you for Sonia's healing. It's just seeing what form that takes. Perhaps it's the perfect surgery, the perfect caretakers, the perfect phone call to the perfect person to help us buy a recliner for her, spent 20 minutes asking questions to get the perfect device for her, and just seeing then what that looks like. I do this with flying also, which is thank you for this being thank you for this being the best flight in the history of aviation. So we're just putting forward what I want to have happen and just putting that out there as an intention, and then just seeing what happens. And not so much watching like, okay, universe, are you here? But is having that habit in place. And so once again, the simplest thing and perhaps the most profound thing is we are making the world bigger by asking for help and having an intention.
Right.
And we are interrupting the old rules and old order of like, well, so and so's got to do this, and like this person's in charge, and we're putting
Oh,
forward a space of grace.
right.
And just quick stories about this. Of I have a client who broke with her boyfriend, moved into signed a year lease with a roommate she did not know, and that roommate turned out to be, not well mentally, and she was stuck. We put forward a prayer. Promptly, the crazy roommate got a boyfriend and was never home.
Mm,
So that isn't making anyone wrong or bad. It's just very simply recognize, okay, what's the solution? What would we like to have happen? And just
right.
welcoming grace. But the main thing that hangs people up, it seems, in this is the absence of practice with this, and the sense of like, well, who am I to ask for what I want? Which gets into the old rules about authority and who's in charge. We're in charge, and it's okay for us to be in charge. There is
Right.
room for us in leadership. It's okay to have a say in our own lives. It's okay for us to advocate for what we would like to have happen.
Right. I have to
Mhm.
I have to be the, I don't know, the downer.
Sure, be the downer.
And I have to be the downer and say, so you gave the airplane example.
Yeah.
And so best flight in aviation, I think is how you put it. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's
Yeah.
say you get off the plane, and after being on the plane for 5 hours, and it was awful. It was
Mm-hmm.
horrible. So
Mm-hmm.
what's that process then? Because I know, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
have my own take on it, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
what do you say to yourself? Yeah.
That by putting forward an intention, there's now a context
Mm-hmm.
that is in place. That I am intending rather than reacting. That I am more apt to, after putting forward intention and prayer, that I have the room to respond to things rather than react. And we are almost all used to reacting, like, oh my God, that happened.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, but if we put forward prayer and intention every day in some way, we get the, oh, that's interesting, that happened. And it's giving us a space of grace to have a buffer before reacting. And this doesn't mean that things don't happen that we don't want, but there's a context to it. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to balance the scene in my mind, the
Mm-hmm.
human the human reaction, the human
Mm-hmm.
judgment about the flight,
Sure.
but then that other part
Mm-hmm.
of myself. Because if I
Mm-hmm.
have that intention of the best flight in aviation,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
then I don't know, somebody
Yeah.
sits next to me and it's just terrible or whatever,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
how does that look? How do we reconcile, I guess, is the question,
When things go
between that
wrong.
intention,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wheels fall off,
Yeah.
in
Or they
the
don't. Yeah.
process. Yeah.
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 Or they don't. I think the larger point, I appreciate the question, I understand the question. One of the specters around spirituality is grandiosity. And we're doing the opposite of that. We're working with humility. But to advocate for, thank you, angels, thank you for there being peace in the world right now. Is that a grandiose prayer or is that an aspirational prayer? I don't know. But it's an intention, and that it is seeing, there's like too many thoughts here, but we're talking about humility and focusing on what we want to have happen. So rather than defer the power to other people and to perhaps through businesses and governments and militaries, let's be powerful right now and have an intention. So what happens when I bless the plane and ask for, thank you for this being the best flight in the history of aviation, this is where I have a road to myself. This is where I get upgraded. This is where, the flight's on time, the luggage comes out first. And just seeing like those things, oh, thank you. That's nice. So when something goes wrong, it's just seeing like, okay, here we are. I put forward intention. That's happened. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's interrupting my like, oh, yeah, like it's interrupting the egoic part of me or the younger part of me, adolescent part of me having a reaction.
Yeah.
It introduces a space of intentionality where just that I could respond rather than react, which takes time and effort. It doesn't mean that everything goes perfectly, but more often than not, that we are experiencing more grace and more peace and more ease.
Yeah. I find it fascinating too, because, when you first said that intention about peace on the planet, the
Yeah.
first time you said that,
Mm-hmm.
when after we started the show,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa, it kind of hit me, because I'm like, yeah, but there's not. But then this
There's
last
not.
time that you said it, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of peace on the planet. And it
Things are.
was really
Yeah.
interesting,
Go ahead and
right?
finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just so
Mm-hmm.
interesting, because, mentally,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was just in a different place, or however you
Mm-hmm.
want to quantify that.
Mm-hmm.
But through your explanation, through what you were just saying,
Mm-hmm.
what has shifted for me is everything's a spectrum anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing's all positive and nothing's all negative. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
always this spectrum. And so there is always something that we can experience or acknowledge that is in alignment with that intention.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be 100%, but
Mm-hmm.
what in nature is really.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just very interesting because, to go back on the airplane flight, and you mentioned some of the things that could go really right, on that flight. And that I
Mm-hmm.
think really helped me anyway, because it got me to see, oh, yeah, because there's always an opportunity to be able to identify all of the positives, the things that did line up, the things that did um, align with that intention.
Yeah.
And I think it helps us, is you use the word context. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really, I don't know, an interesting concept. So I'm thinking about all of this a little bit differently. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
for
You're welcome.
explaining it like that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I think there's a fundamental thought that might be helpful here, which is once again, it's okay for us to have a say. It also is we are so used to other people being in charge.
Mm,
And what's it like for us to focus on our own preference, coming back to what would I like to have happen? What would you like to have happen? And it's just seeing how, um, if we talk about um, being our conscious adult self, and one thing that's shifting pretty radically right now is we're witnessing the end of the old masculine, which is shut up, lady, I know more than you, where
mm,
you don't have a role, you don't have a space, you're not valued. And into the new masculine, which is having a confidence that's inclusive and encouraging, which is, I'm so grateful to talk with you right now. I'm so grateful that you're sharing this space and that you're of service. Thank you for doing that. But it's power with as opposed to power over. We are used to power over. We're used to being told what to do. That's collapsing pretty substantially right now. And so it's not okay that people are being harmed and killed. It's not okay. Honestly, why do we still kill each other?
oh, I
It's insane. It's
know. Hmm.
absolutely insane. And Eckhart Tolle, I think it's either in Power of Now or New Earth, he talks about that it's insane that we kill each other. B, it's insane that we watch movies as entertainment of people killing each other. So why are we still doing this? What's going to change there? Which is, let's have an intention as caring people that this end, and that we advocate for wise and kind leadership, and that we are included in that wise and kind leadership. That it's okay for us to evolve. So America especially is growing up right now. If we could think of, this is big picture context of so it's no longer okay to be unconscious. And in the since that's been in place, it's like since David Bowie died at the beginning of 2016, of that if it's no longer okay to be unconscious, a lot of people are becoming as conscious as possible, or recognizing that more is on the table. We're also witnessing in this era of obedience, a lot of people throwing away their power as quickly as possible. That guy's in charge, you know? And what if we include ourselves? What if we then allow there to be a focus on, thank you, angels, for taking care of myself and my loved ones. Thank you for everyone whom I know and don't know thriving. Thank you for the highest good happening. And it's this seeing with where what is missing, and especially in America, it's wisdom. Like, why does America dislike wisdom? And this completely adolescent culture, which is growing up. So we're seeing the disconnect that is there. It's okay for us to be wise. It's okay for people in their, you know, this is likely your audience, people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. And why do people get more spiritual as we get older? We recognize what's not happening. We recognize what's real and what's truthful. And it's okay for us to have a preference. It's okay for us to use power. It's okay for us to individualize our energy. It's okay for things to go well and all that. And it's the same, also the space of this is what we're here to do. That this is not a casual lifetime that we're choosing here. There's nothing casual at all about it. But if we could see in that context that we're here with purpose. So we all signed up to be here on the planet at the moment where the planet becomes peaceful, that we cease harming each other and killing each other and punishing each other. We release those dynamics to get into a space of generosity, encouragement, and cooperation. And so we're witnessing that more on a personal level and perhaps on a community level, not so much on a government level, definitely not military level, and in the general conversation. So the feedback is bad news, bad news, bad news. Let's focus on and create good news. And just
Yeah.
seeing the different ways and means in which we have power in that.
So beautifully said, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right. Now I'm starting to shift gears.
Yeah.
I get this. This is
Yeah.
and it's beautiful to sit and talk to you because even the words that you say, I just
Mm-hmm.
feel I feel the energy of what
Mm-hmm.
you're communicating. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really neat, from where I'm sitting. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're
Um,
welcome. Thank you.
so if we're ready, then let's say we are wanting then to communicate with our angels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what can we do? So, can you give us I don't know, some instructions? So, if we want
Yeah.
to get started with this, and first of all, I just want to make sure we don't have to do anything to get ready, right? We can just decide that we're going to start this and we can do it, correct?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And so perhaps if there were an Angel 101, it is trusting your affinity. Archangel Michael's really easy to talk to and to communicate with. If you think of like a 10-foot tall blue angel who's, unconditionally loving and already friends with you. And we might say, thank you, Archangel Michael, for being with me right now.
Mm.
Thank you, Archangel Michael, for clearing my energy and my environment right now. And just saying that, like, I feel energy moving and such. And it's just trusting that. And this takes practice and muscle. And perhaps we afford ourselves a space to practice those things. And we could also thank you, Archangel Raphael, the angel of healing. Thank you, Archangel Raphael, for healing all of my loved ones right now. Thank you, Archangel Raphael, for healing me right now. Thank you, Archangel Raphael, for healing everyone who's in a hospital right now. Thank you, Archangel Raphael, for healing all animals right now. And there's also, I just noticed, and just giving the example, like these words have grace and power to them. Like there's an energy flow to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we could just talk real quick about the flip side of this, which
Yeah.
is who the bleeper are you to ask for help? Who the bleeper are you
Yeah.
to talk to the angels? That's an old dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
which is based on control.
Right.
That it's
Yes.
okay. So coming back to the headline about angels is unconditional love. We are used to conditional love. We're used to negotiating for love, contorting ourselves for love, suppressing ourselves for love, and that love being temporary. So right now, that unconditional love, which means that no matter what has happened, that you are loved, no matter what hasn't happened, that you are loved, no matter what might or might not have happened, that you are loved. So that thing that went wrong, the mistake that we made in 1973 that creates us to not ask for help, let's trust that that's forgiven. It's okay to learn from our mistakes, that we're not perfect, but it's okay for us to be loved, and it's okay to witness unconditional love and to engage with unconditional love. So
Yeah.
all the things that stop us, all the things that create a pause, perhaps we could just let them set aside. Also, just with working with angels, 1% works great. To not go for like trying to kick open the door, but just to practice with what's it like to ask Archangel Michael's help 1%.
Mm. Yeah. And then what do you suggest then? We notice, we keep a journal, Do you have any advice about that?
Yeah, to notice how you feel.
Mm,
That it feels really good to ask for help and perhaps brings immediate relief. We could also then have gratitude. Thank you, Michael, for helping me. Thank you, Raphael, for helping me and my loved ones. Thank you, angels, for your wonderful presence. And then perhaps we could just listen for guidance that comes. That might sound like, thank you, angels, for this peaceful planet. Is there anything you'd like me to know? And we just listen and just notice. And this is individual for all of us.
hmm
We might get a message from the bird that flies or from the song on the radio. And just seeing the universe being in contact with us. And then we go about our day. That it's not like when we order food in a restaurant, we trust that the waiter is going to bring the right thing. We don't follow the waiter back into the kitchen. So let's just trust that putting forward these intentions, that we could just witness what happens. And we could refine our prayers. Thank you, angels, for helping there to be. Thank you, angels, for there being peace on earth. Thank you for everyone in a role of authority having an open heart and clear mind. I want to make sure I'm answering all your questions.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's just a lot of possibility, I think,
Yeah.
is where I am
Mm-hmm.
right now as I
Yeah.
listen to you. And
Mm-hmm.
the word co-creation really
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is lighting up for me because, you
Yeah.
know, I see this as a process of co-creation. We might be
Mm-hmm.
asking for help, but
Mm-hmm.
we're a part of this because it's our intention, and
Yeah.
our willingness to ask and receive
Mm-hmm.
is also part of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we also have guides, right?
Yeah.
So angels,
For sure.
guides.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, I, I don't know, is there a role of angels and a role of guides, or um, anything that might help us engage? I mean, if we're asking angels, what are our guides doing for us?
The universe will find the open door.
Oh.
So honestly, this sounds facetious and it's not. If talking to David Bowie is helpful and easy, let's do it. Talking to Maya Angelou or Ella Fitzgerald or Mary Oliver or Walt Whitman or William Blake
Hmm.
or your grandmother or Saint Germain or Mother Mary or Kuan Yin, Ganesh, whoever we have an affinity for, animal guides and such, nature. It's the saying, this is where affinity matters. So as a teenager, especially, I absolutely loved the Doors and Jim Morrison. And as I became spiritual, like showed up as a guide, not so much the rock star, but the poet. And he's a really good guide. And that makes sense to me in terms of affinity and intention, but also that the musicians especially are great guides because they are mass communicators. And they want us to have help. So in answering your question, it's like saying, like, well, who do you resonate with? Do you really like Van Gogh? Let's talk to Van Gogh. Do you really like Frida Kahlo or Hilma af Klint? Let's talk to Hilma or Frida. And just see what happens with that. We could experiment with this. There is no downside, but it is a space to be spiritually curious of this is also the benefit of working with multiple guys to well, who really gets your attention? Who's loud to you? Who feels a strong resonance with you? Who do you resonate with? So to rephrase this, we get to trust our free will and our affinities, our preferences. It took, there's all this kind of religious damage in my background, and just seeing where, what's it like to divorce certain guides from organized religion and let them just be a guide.
Mm,
And that's true with angels also, and the
correct.
word prayer.
Mm-hmm.
But just to see what works for you and to be curious about it.
Yeah.
But
And
there
just,
is no downside to it, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
I love
Mhm.
that message. No downside to it. I love
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes people bring fear and all of that into this. And I
Hmm.
think it's just another obstacle, that we choose for whatever
Well, those are
reason.
the rules. Yeah.
Hmm.
Who are you to ask for help? You know, that kind of narrative. And you're a human being alive in 2024 where your happiness, your healing matters enormously. And
Yeah.
coming back to the pandemic and the world right now, which is everything feels unfamiliar to everyone. So we're witnessing the existing structure collapsing. Let's add to the equation. What do we want to have happen? We all want peace and love.
Yes, we do. Yes, we
Hmm.
do. And on
Yeah,
that note, Mark, I'm wondering if
sure.
there's any last thing that you'd like to share with our audience, any
Yeah.
other message that you feel is really important.
That speaking to everyone, that you could do it. That everyone matters, and that we all have tremendous value. And it's not working to have our value diminished or to be disregarded. So we get to assert and affirm and receive our own value. We get to encourage and support others, including family and friends and the people at the supermarket and the gas station. That we get to acknowledge each other and drop out of the obsession with difference and to advocate for our commonality of experience, which is this is a bit tough right now. And as sensitive people, that we interrupt the constriction and go for the expansion.
Mm,
And to trust that it's okay to be happy, it's okay for things to get better. But I think the largest point to make here is that we are not alone in this. There are millions of people praying, there's millions of people listening to podcasts, there's millions of people who want a peaceful planet. And that's not in the headlines. That's not in the news. But even as we sleep, there are other people advocating for peace. That is not on our shoulders individually, which we might feel that it's our responsibility. What can I do? Which might be overwhelming or anxiety provoking. That as spiritual people in the spiritual world, we take turns, and that we don't need to be on all the time. That does not work. That's taxing. But we could have a moment, perhaps in the morning, to have some intention and to receive support, to recognize that no one is alone, that you are not alone, and that you matter, and it's okay to matter. So that's the message, that we could do it. We're not doing it alone.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much, Mark.
You're welcome. You're
And
welcome.
for
Thank you.
our, oh, yes, you're so welcome.
Hmm.
I'd like to have you invite our audience to connect with you. How
Hmm.
might they best do that, Mark?
Um, the recordings I mentioned are on YouTube, and it's under my name, Mark Mezadourian, and they're all free. And there's just a lot of them. Recordings are also available on the meditation app Insight Timer.
Oh, okay.
I have
Yeah.
meditations there. Um, and also through my website, which is my name, markmezadourian.com. And everyone is welcome to come. I do have free held spaces on Zoom. They are on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. West Coast time, which would be 1 p.m. East Coast time, and also on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock um, West Coast time and 10 East Coast time. And there is, I think, of noting perhaps a lot of value. I just recently did with a bookstore in Portland, Oregon called New Renaissance Bookshop, which is one of my favorite stores. And with one of the managers there, Melanie Saltz, we did a 8-part exploration of The Body Keeps a Score, the book about trauma.
Mm,
And what the goal was with that is not so much like, hey, dude, you're traumatized. It was more like, here are the solutions. Here's how trauma works. Here's how it's working in your brain. Here are the solutions. So that's out there. That's on YouTube for free, those conversations. And a lot about angels. So those are the main ways, which is YouTube. I'm also very active on Instagram,
Oh,
not
great.
so much on Facebook, but it's under my name. And there's a lot of just free things and free things for people to experiment with and to try out, you know. And there is no like, watch this for free and then this is $49.99. There's nothing like that. There are paid things. If anyone wants a reading, you could book a reading on my site, that kind of thing. But mainly, there's this spaces to connect and also to see how this works for you, for everyone.
Yeah.
So those are the easy ways to connect. So
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
mhm.
So much hope, so much non-judgment, I don't even want to use the word judgment, even though I said non-judgment, because, it has a vibration. But
Yeah,
wow, this is just wonderful because, yeah, I feel so much more peace at the end of
good,
our conversation.
good. I'm
And
glad.
yeah, I hope our
Yeah,
listeners can feel that also.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark. We'll put the relevant links also in the show
Okay,
notes and
I
also the
appreciate
video
that.
description on YouTube. So it'll
Yeah,
be easier for them to connect.
good, good. Can I say one more thing here, which is
Absolutely.
this is not where things end. How things are. This is not where things end.
Right.
This is prompting us into. Are you guys fed up with this?
Oh, yeah.
Do you guys want to pray for what you want? If you think of all of us being urged, like, what do you want to have happen? And it's
Yeah.
not like, oh, we want 5 billionaires to rule the world. No, we want everyone to thrive, and it's okay for us to advocate for that.
Yeah. And
And the old structure has collapsed, and they're panicked. Let's assert what we want. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
oh, I was just going to say,
yeah,
yeah. And you know what? We're
yeah.
claiming
Mhm.
our future. And yeah. And
Yes, we are.
this is the Great Awakening. And
It
what an
is.
exciting time to be on the planet.
Yep, no accident. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Mark. So thank you and for being here and for
Hmm.
all what you're doing, all those things that you're offering to help us all uh,
Thank you.
be in
Thank you.
resonance and evolve.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And you're welcome. Thank you. And I want to thank you for holding a beautiful space and for the service you're providing and reaching a lot of people and for being a healer.
Oh,
It's not necessarily an easy time to be a healer, but we get to keep working and keep focused and keep evolving. And that's a great space. So I appreciate the health space and your questions and everything that you provided here. So thank you.
it's my honor. My honor. Thank you.
Hmm.
And from myself and the team here at Beyond the Reiki Gateway, we'd like to say thank you to our listeners for all of your support, including leaving great reviews, becoming BTRG insiders, and sharing this show with your friends and family. Drop us a line at info@beyondthereikigateway.com anytime. Tell us what's on your mind and take great care. Until next time. Thank you for listening, and you can check the show notes or visit the website beyondthereikigateway.com to find out more about the podcast and connect with me. Please keep in mind that views and opinions expressed in the show don't necessarily reflect those of the podcast or anyone affiliated with its production or advertising. This program is presented for your entertainment only, and all information provided is to be utilized at the listener's own discretion. I, along with the BTRG team, hope you enjoy the show as much as we enjoy making it for you. Wishing you highest blessings until we meet again beyond the Reiki Gateway.